Hello class. I'm going to show you now how to use Google Forms to get information, and then in a later video I'm going to show you how to take that information from your original survey that you did in Google Forms, translate that into Google Sheets, and use the power of Google Sheets mathematic tools to do all the calculations for you so you actually don't have to do very much math yourself, but still be able to figure out whether or not you have statistical results that have meaning. So let's get started with the first part of this. You can see here the original form that I did with you guys a couple weeks ago before I had you do your own to get some fun information that really doesn't mean anything. I'll let you know now my hypothesis is that people who like spicier foods or foods with more heat tend to also choose colors that are warmer in tone. We'll see if that's true, but that's my fun hypothesis. The first thing that we're going to notice is we can go to responses, and if you've been doing your forms, you've probably already figured this out. Google Forms does a really good job of breaking down a lot of information for you in kind of an overview. But what this doesn't do is it doesn't tell us whether or not there's statistical significance or correlate answers together. I'm going to show you how to do those things coming up soon. First, I want to show you the kinds of information that we get out of Google Forms. We have our summary data here, which takes all of the answers together and gives us a total. We have individual questions, so we can look at each question individually and see how many people responded to what. 2 people out of 10 like the number 7. Great. The other thing we can do is we can go to individual responses. And so now we're looking at response by person. So the first person to do this said their favorite number was 44. They're between 5.1 and 5.4, and so on. What we are mostly going to be interested in for right now is the summary response. Individual responses are really good for digging down into outliers. If you've got some answers that are way out there from what most of your data is, it's probably good to check in and see how people are responding, just to make sure that they're getting the question properly and that there isn't a problem with how you're asking questions or how you set things up. You can also do this by looking at questions. If you want to see a question that just doesn't seem to be producing the data that you expected, maybe look at the question and how people are responding to it. But let's go to summary. This is going to give us our basic overview tools. So we've got our favorite number divided by bar graph. We can see one person or 10% of you chose 91, 44, and so on. We've got a nice pie chart here. It seems like half of the respondents are between 5.1 and 5.4. The rest 5.5 to 5.8, and just a couple between, or one rather, between 5'9" and 6 feet tall. When we look at the kinds of ethnic foods that people like, we've got a relatively high response to Chinese. We've got Italian over here, and then Canadian and Indian and Mexican seem to be the next 4. A few that got nothing at all. That's okay. We really just want to see where people fall. And then the next piece of information I was really interested in was what colors do people like? In order to make these two make sense, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to assign a numerical value that corresponds with the amount of spiciness or savoriness, giving it a point value, and then doing the same thing for colors from coolest to warmest. Cool being a low point value, warmest being a high point value. And then see if there's a correlation between these two number scores here. I'll show you how to do that later. Some other fun things that I asked but really had nothing to do with what I intended to measure are fictional characters and a control question I asked just in case people had lived somewhere, but maybe that influences their decision on whether or not they like food. I wanted to find out if I had a bunch of people that have lived there, then I would know, oh, there's a strong connection between people and Chinese food. Have people lived in China? Well, 6 of you have no interest in this location, which means I'm probably looking at authentic interest in the cuisine without influence of where you've been living. Remember that these sample sizes are really small. I mean, 10 is not a reliable number at all, but for the purposes of showing you how to do this stuff, we're okay. And then how would you rate the survey? Great, thanks everyone for liking it, 5 out of 5. So the first thing that we're going to do after looking over the overview data is we are going to make sure that when we've got all the responses that we want, we're going to turn off accepting responses. Okay, now the form is closed. We're not going to have more people adding data to our survey. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to click on this icon here. It's going to give us our responses in Google Sheets. And here we go. You can see that we have this section across the top here, which is frozen, should be frozen. Yep, it's frozen, which is good. If for some reason you don't have the top row of your sheet frozen, it's really easy to do. You just click over here under View. You're going to click Freeze. Then you're going to click one row. Okay, remember rows are across, columns are down. This means that this data cannot be changed and should not be included when we're counting things up. Now what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to go in here and assign some values for these things. Now I've already done that. I believe I've done that. Yep, I've done that right over here. So now I can do a little bit of data crunching, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second.